everyone. We are live on all the platforms. Hello. Today we are going to be talking about accessing your creative genius. I'm going to be answering some big questions that you guys had for me. So today's going to be a little bit like training. Yeah. So I hope you're going to get something really valuable out of today's session. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments and I will make sure that I answer them in my next live and my next video. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Claudine. I am a comedian and creativity coach. I'm living in London, but it always wasn't like this. I have been in this industry now for the last 14 years. And I started off, I lived in London 10 years ago. And I remember I was sitting in my London flat, feeling completely lost. I just graduated 2 years before from university. And I was working as a teaching assistant. Okay, so how many of you have or went to university thinking that you would come out of university with a job? And this wasn't the case for me. I was living in London, working as a teaching assistant. I was watching my peers back in South Africa who were 2 years ahead of me now in the industry, in the game. They were succeeding. They were doing exceptionally well on television and film. And I felt completely lost. My visa was coming to an end, which meant I had to go back to South Africa. And I remember speaking to a mentor of mine saying, I'm really terrified to go back to South Africa, feeling like I've wasted 2 years, feeling like I could have spent those 2 years in South Africa in the industry. I would have been 2 years ahead. And she said something that completely changed the game for me. Okay, she said that do not undervalue your life experiences, because that wrong path that you are going down is becoming your signature story. It is becoming the voice behind your art. And I remember feeling completely inspired by what she said and being like, okay, cool, I'm going to come home and I'm going to give it a try. And I went to go and see one of the biggest agents in South Africa, and I took my CV. He didn't even look at my CV. He took one look at me and he said, you're too large to be in the industry. Now, how many of you have ever looked someone directly in the eye yet felt completely unseen? So what he had said broke me, because I realized that I had bought into the lie that I needed to be a certain shape, size, way in order to be in the entertainment industry, and that my talent meant nothing. Okay, so I remember just feeling completely unworthy. And one day I had made a vision board, and on my vision board there was a picture of Amy Poehler, and underneath there was a quote that Amy Poehler said that said, improv is like the military, you leave no man behind. And I'd felt really left behind in this entertainment industry that promised me at university that my talent was enough. And, that's obviously not what I got. And what I started to believe and what I started to think was that I needed to fit into a certain mold to be successful. And the industry, and when society said, go the safe route or get a safe job, I thought that that was where I was headed and where I was going to land up. And this picture of Amy Poehler and this quote, I remember looking at it one day and it just jumping out at me, because I remember making a decision And the decision I made was that I am going to be so good at this thing that they can't ignore me. So I took my life savings that I had made in London while all of my friends were traveling Europe and living the dream. I had taken my life savings and I was like, I am going to go study improv comedy at the best institutions in the world. And I didn't know how I would survive when I got back because I would have no money left, but I was so determined to change that narrative that I had in my head that I was going to do whatever it takes. And I remember I had to apply for a few grants. I still didn't have enough money. And I applied for some artist grants and eventually I got a grant and I took all of this money and I booked a ticket to go to LA, New York, and Chicago. And I took every single improv course that I could afford. And I had 2 major breakthroughs. And I actually, wait, before I say that I can afford, that's scarcity thinking. Okay? Because the way I got there was not going, I can't afford this. What I thought was, how can I afford this? So even though I didn't have enough money, I applied for the grant so that nothing could stop me, that I would have enough money. So my solution was applying for the grant. So I managed to afford it. Okay. So basically, I had 2 major breakthroughs when I arrived back. Well, once I had completed all the courses in New York, LA, and Chicago. The first one was I realized that I could access my creative genius, my funny, my humor, and I didn't need a script. I didn't need somebody else's permission to put me on television or to cast me in a commercial or to put me on stage. I could do this thing. I could access my own creative genius. I could access my own funny, and I could do it myself. That was the biggest aha and gift that I could have gotten. It made my spending my life savings a no-brainer. A no-brainer, because that one lesson, huge life lesson, changed the course and the trajectory of my life forever. Okay, it set me on a new path. The other aha moment I had was I realized as I looked beside me in the improv comedy courses that I was doing that no one else in my class, was there to study improv comedy to necessarily become the best comedian. There were lawyers and doctors and students who were there to use improv comedy as a tool to access their creative genius, to take it back and implement it into their careers and their lives. And I was like, wait a minute, nothing like this exists in South Africa. So I said, I'm going to use my new tool that I have that has helped me access my creative genius. And I am going to develop the first for Africa improv training company that allows people to access their creative genius on demand, because I want to give people the gift of discovering their authenticity and their creative genius, because that's the gift that I was given. So it became my vision, my mission to share that gift with the world. And for those of you who have worked with me and who have known me and who know this part of the story, you'll know that I developed a process, a framework called From Blocked to Brilliant. Now, I was working with the first corporate that I got when I came back was with Ogilvy. And Ogilvy said, you need to work with these brilliant minds, this group of creatives. They all are feeling completely trapped. there's perfectionism is holding back, fear of underperforming. I need to really get in there and help these people unleash their creative genius. So, because you see, they were all stuck in this thing called I like to call the creativity paradox. So the more pressure they felt to produce and to be creative, the less creative they actually were. So, and you guys know, if you're staring at a blank page and you're feeling the pressure mount as your deadline approaches and comes closer and closer, you'll know exactly what I mean. Okay, so I developed this framework called From Block to Brilliant, and I remember that I needed to make sure that this framework was as fun, as simple, and as quick as possible. Because as I walked into this agency, I realized that these agency creatives get the brief and there is this time limit. Okay, so we have to be working within really hectic time frames. It has to be really simple and fun because really simple, fun, and quick, because they need a solution that actually gets them switching off their self-sabotage center. And if it is fun and exciting to do, what they will do is they will switch off the self-sabotage center in their head that says, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, because now they're in a state of play. And you cannot be in a state of play and a state of unworthiness at the exact same time. Okay, so that is why I developed this framework, so that it shuts off the voice inside your head that says you're not original, your ideas don't matter, you may have a voice, but you don't have a message. Okay? And I allowed people through this framework to take risks, have fun, and access their creative genius at lightning speed. Okay? And that is how From Blocked to Brilliant was born. Okay? Because creativity is not about forcing brilliance. It's about removing the blocks that hide it. Okay? So if you look at other courses and other things that gurus do, you'll see that they want to add more techniques and cram in more strategies and teach 100 different brainstorming ideas. And here's what's fascinating that I learned in the trenches of improv comedy. Trying to force creativity is like trying to force yourself to fall asleep. Okay, the harder you try, the more it eludes you. Okay, so what I realized is true creativity is not actually about adding more, but rather it's about subtracting all those obstacles that are in the way. So I want you to think about it. When are you most creative? You are most creative in the shower, going for a walk, right before you fall asleep. Not when you're forcing creativity, but rather when you are moving out of your own way. So what I realized by creating this framework is that I needed, and what is different about my framework compared to all the other gurus, is I knew it wasn't about forcing the creativity, but about removing the obstacles. Removing the thing that is holding you back, helping you get out of your own way, because it's much easier to get into a flow state when you remove the no state. Okay, so if you said to me, what is the biggest thing holding people back? It's not actually a lack of talent. I think this is like an internal narrative that we have. And I find that this is something that actually most talented people battle with the most. is a sense of imposter syndrome. And that is because I'm not creative enough. My ideas are not original. Who am I to think I can achieve this thing? You know, is internal beliefs that is holding us back. But here's what's interesting. These aren't just thoughts. They are actually creative blocks. All right? So in improv, what I learned is the moment you say yes and to your ideas instead of no but, everything changes. Everything changes. You know, so the real enemy here is that inner self-critic, that part of you that says my ideas aren't worthy, they're not good enough to be shared, they are silly, I don't have a message. I don't have a message. I may have a voice, but I don't have a message. And what I want you to know is that your creative genius, it's not lost. It's inherent within all of us, okay? It's not lost. It is just waiting to emerge. Another thing that I found that's really holding people back is, and when I first started teaching this creative, like genius workshops, I thought people's biggest challenge may be technique, okay? But I discovered that it was actually something far more profound, okay? Because in my first workshops at Ogilvy, a brilliant creative director pulled me aside and said, Claudine, I feel like a fraud. The more successful I become, the more terrified I am, okay? And, maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you understand when the voice inside your head says, it's not perfect enough, or it's never going to be perfect enough, or who am I to have this opinion, or who am I to have this idea? They talk about analysis paralysis and overthinking, so this overthinking is actually what leads to being creatively paralyzed. Okay, it's the pressure to be brilliant on demand when you don't have access to the brilliance in the first place. Okay, because there's so many obstacles in your way. So, but here is what is interesting about perfectionism, about imposter syndrome. They're actually signals of your creative genius trying to emerge. So I want you to think about it. Someone who cares deeply about their craft is actually someone who worries about it being perfect. All right. So only someone with real potential actually feels like an imposter. So when that enemy inside your head whispers, I'm not good enough and I can't do this and I've got to keep tweaking and I've got to keep revising, when it tells you that you are paralyzed, I want you to understand that perfectionism isn't about high standards. It's about fear wearing a mask of excellence. Okay? So what's interesting is that creativity, what's interesting actually is that overthinking is not a creativity problem, it's a trust problem. Okay? Overthinking is you lacking the trust or self-belief, a belief in your ideas being worthy enough to share. Okay. I remember I was at clown school, and I know that's so funny to even say out loud, but I was at clown school and I'd gone to do, a course in clowning, which is so fantastic. Like, I use a lot of clowning techniques in my teaching today because it's a fantastic tool to get to your authentic genius and find your funny. And I remember we had this exercise, which it was called Make Us Laugh, and we had to come out on stage, and for about 45 minutes, all we had was this red nose, but we had to come out on stage and make everybody laugh. And I remember this fear, oh my gosh, this overwhelming fear standing in my way of nobody laughing. And what I realized while I was standing there and no one was laughing and I was dying on stage was that if I am in my head, I am dead. And what that means is if I am overanalyzing, if I am worrying about what other people think about me, if I am judging my creative ideas before they come out of my mouth, if I'm judging my creativity and overthinking and worrying about perfectionism, I cannot move from this place. Cannot get out of this space. So when you stop trying to be perfect and trust in your creative genius, trust in your ideas, trust in your voice, trust in your authenticity, this is when ideas flow. This is when your creative genius is able to be unleashed. Okay, this is the power. So I want you to know that your overthinking is not the enemy of creativity. It's just your genius speaking a language that you haven't learned to trust yet. Write that one down. That is power. So if you guys have felt moved, touched, inspired, and you guys are looking to get out of your own way creatively and access your creative genius on demand in the quickest, funnest, simplest way possible, I am teaching a masterclass. And I want you guys to sign up, to register below. It is a virtual masterclass. It's going to be all online. And I'm going to teach you in this masterclass how to access your creative genius in the simplest, funnest, most easy way possible. Okay. I'm going to show you the exact framework I've used with top agencies, with celebrities, and with innovators to get them to access their creative genius on demand. I'm going to show you how to transform your overthinking into your creative genius and into having creative breakthroughs. And I'm going to show you the secret into turning pressure into creative power. So I want you to imagine that you are going to finally be in a space where you are able to trust your creative ideas. You're able to share them openly. You're going to be able to turn your unique perspective into valuable solutions. Okay, so I want you guys to sign up for this masterclass. I'm going to put a link below if you guys want access, VIP access to the masterclass, where you guys are going to get an extra hour of training, a Q&A session with me, and you're going to get a workbook, which means you can start your process and your journey to accessing your creative genius immediately. I want you guys to sign up in the link below. Angel Doves, I cannot wait to take you from feeling blocked and broken and unworthy to standing in your creative genius and standing in your creative power. Angel Doves on all the platforms. You guys are amazing. Remember to stay hilarious.